Right, lads and lasses, it's time for some home truths. No more sugarcoating, or no more fine margins, and definitely no more PR fluff. My voice is back. My patience is finally gone. However, after everything we've been through with the highs of the Champions League this season and the 10-man heroics, we need to look in the mirror. This just isn't a bad patch. We are having some real problems, and today we're seeing exactly what the media and the rest of the pundits are too scared to touch. I mean, I love these players. I love what the squad's given with. I love what Eddie Howe has given with over the past 4 years. But things are looking a bit weird this season. Now, that could purely be because of the way the whole summer went on. But I mean, even then, look at the players that were brought in the summer. We've got the likes of Anthony Elanga, we've got the likes of Johan Wissa. We're signed some really good players in the summer window. Them lads should be hitting the ground running. Yes, they haven't had the time on the training pitch. I get that. But, they should be hitting the ground running. Elanga, he's starting to hit it now. But it's took him a while to get going. And, the likes of Johan Wissa, he ended up getting injured. That wasn't obviously his fault. Completely down to his international side, playing him when they didn't need to. And then, you've got the other incidents this season where players have been picking up injuries, and that's another thing. We seem to be constantly still picking up injuries, and it's just not on. We need to sort that out. We need to be having the players being able to rotate more and being able to stay fresh for longer. And that is again down to the fact of not being able to spend what we want to spend, and of course being shackled by the Premier League. And also we need to look at the tactical side of things as well. I mean, Eddie, I absolutely love what Eddie's done for us, but at times, Eddie has made some questionable decisions this season. Not picking the right starting lineup, or going into games, winning against a team, then the next week switching the team from what we had in the previous week. Now, I know we've got to rotate. I know we'll have to do that with how many games that we've been playing, but not to rotate it as much as that we have a point where it's pretty much an entire different 11 playing to what was playing the previous week. And looking at it, we've got a lot of players in this squad right now that are really wanting to fight for the badge, but unfortunately their legs are just not there to do it. The likes of Dan Burn, the likes of Trippier, Nick Pope has been really, really bad, I thought, this season. And Aaron Ramsdale has been a breath of fresh air to see come in, between the sticks, because he can play with his feet. He's really good at distributing the ball out from the back, which is something that we are trying to do a lot more, I've noticed this season as well. But we do need to, get that bite back. Dan Burns said it himself, we're lacking that fire, we're lacking that intensity that was showed in previous seasons. We don't have that aggressiveness that we had. We seem to be like a weak kitten these days, which is a bit strange. We need to be a fierce fighting machine and be able to go into the games and get in people's faces and, just not care about what the players of the other team think or what the ref does. We just need to go in there and be aggressive. And you could see it, if we had just been more aggressive in that second half against Sunderland, then we would have come away with the win, at the end of the day. But it just seemed to be weak, whimpering, and just it seems to be like that a lot this season, which is very frustrating to see. And then, you've got people coming out and they're saying, how out? At the end of the day, it's a valid point. But he has done a lot for it. He does deserve a bit of credibility, a bit of, time to, get things right. I think Eddie is the right man to take forward. Don't get us wrong. I think, if he can address the situation that is going on right now and he can adapt to it, then, he will be the guy to take forward. But he has had conversations, according to, news going around. There has been conversations this week with Eddie Howe. Players, of course, got sent home from training to rest up, and that, especially with the international break being on. and there was supposedly talks with Eddie. If that was, to give him maybe a warning or whatever, we don't know. Could just purely be to talk about the future of Newcastle for, of course, the summer window, talk about plans for the summer window and stuff like that, because there was also rumours going around that there was talks with Ross Wilson ahead of the summer window as well. And obviously that's expected. We've got a lot of things coming up in the summer and a lot more money. Obviously, there's a new SCR, squad cost ratio, coming into effect as well next season instead of this PSR situation. So that's something that'll be, talked about, I'm sure, of late from, of course, the higher ups at the club, PIF, David Hopkinson and such going forward. But I mean, we've got to be careful. We don't want to be going down that road, what we've been down in the past, where there's people screaming for the manager to be sacked, then the manager gets sacked, and the next person that comes in just doesn't do the job and can't do the job. And, we're seeing the same sort of situation going on with them. We've seen it in the past. A lot of people were screaming for, managers to be sacked, and then the next manager came in and he couldn't do the job either. So we've got to be careful. We've got to be careful on what we're wishing for going forward. And I hate to use that line because, it's an old line from, of course, the previous regime, but it is something that we definitely need to, be careful of, because we don't want to be seeing, Eddie going and then the next person that comes in, just can't do the job, and we end up in a situation that we've seen with the likes of other teams in the Premier League, the likes of Spurs, multiple managers since they sacked their manager. And then, of course, Forest the same, and other clubs in the Premier League as well, just sacking managers right, left and centre, trying to correct it by bringing in another manager, and it just doesn't work because you're just constantly switching things up. There's no, consistency. There's no chance for the team to get a bit of a hold on each other and go into a, plan together going forward. But then there's people coming out in the talking about the silence of PIF at the moment. Now, I don't get this one bit. Yes, there is a little bit of a silence, but let's not forget what is going on right now in the Middle East. I won't go into it in full detail, obviously, because that is a political thing and my channel is not politically fueled. However, with what's going on over in the Middle East right now, obviously that is why we haven't seen the likes of Yasser Rahmani or a representative from PIF coming over for the game against Barcelona, coming over for the Tyne and Wear derby. Obviously there's very important things that they are having to deal with in their country right now with what is going on over there in the Middle East. So that is probably one of the reasons why we haven't seen somebody from PIF come over, the likes of, Yasser Rahmani, the president, of course, or anybody else from PIF. But we have heard just recently that there has been talks with Eddie, and there has been the talks, so maybe there's been a representative come from somewhere else that isn't based in the Middle East to have them talks, because that seems like that's what has been the case with that one, of course. And we've got players, that we need to keep in this team going into the summer window. There's players that are no-go, untouchable players in my book, the likes of Bruno. I wouldn't sell him for anything. The likes of Miley, he's one of our own, definitely going nowhere in my book. The likes of Tino and Halsey, complete concrete signings for me. They shouldn't be going anywhere. And then you've got other players in there, the likes of Gordon, Sandro Tonali as well. I would say they're not going anywhere, but if the right offer came in, I'm sure, the club would probably consider it. But for Bruno, Tino, Halsey and Miley, them four right there, I'd say they're definite no-go, definite untouchable players. And doesn't matter what kind of fee comes in, I don't think Newcastle United are going to sell any of them 4 players, and rightly so, because Tino and Halsey, England's best fullbacks right now, and that's why they've been called up into the squad. Miley, future England midfielder, so again, that's why he shouldn't be sold. And Bruno's the captain. He gets the club. He knows the club inside and out, and he just gets the fan base as well. So why would we want to sell somebody like Bruno, who is literally the soul of this club? He just drives the club forward. But other players, let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Who would you say are the untouchable players in Newcastle United? You've heard mine. That's my 4, of course, of Halsey, Tino, Bruno, and Miley. Them are the 4 that I would say are definite no-go. And obviously, Gordon and Sandro are up there as well. But I think, given the right offer, if it wasn't, an offer that we couldn't refuse, then I think, we would say maybe them lads moving on. But that is just my thought. But let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. As always, remember, like, share, subscribe to the channel. Like I says, I'm not here to give you the fluff. I'm not here, to mess about. I'm here to give you the truth. We are Newcastle United, and we've survived worse than this. We've fought. We're way back before, and we can fight. We're way back again. And I think we've got every chance, of course, of getting that European football. But it's just about Eddie getting things right on the training ground, getting things right tactically, getting things right in the formation, getting things right with the lineup as well. And then, of course, other factors away from the manager and the players, pulling together, driving the team up the table and getting ourselves into that European place. And then let's see what we can do in the summer once, we get a chance to start spending some more money and see who we can bring in through the door at Newcastle United. But let us know your thoughts anyway down in the comments below. Remember to like, share, subscribe to the channel. I hope you did like this video. If you did, like I say, hit that like button, as that is a great way to support the channel going forward. Till next time, see you on the next one. However, lads.